Hey friends, what happened again this night? Israel has now officially attacked Iran. Mohammed Bakri, the highest ranking military general, was killed in the process. Last night, the main targets were military sites, especially those suspected of developing atomic bombs. Iran is now officially planning to launch counterattacks and declare war on Israel. That would, of course, be absolutely devastating. Accordingly, we've also seen a drop in the crypto market. But now I'll explain to you rationally how I see the whole situation and what simply needs to be said here. And especially to everyone who can't think rationally, particularly with such a difficult topic, I would just say, look away. Because here we're talking about the crypto market, and that's what we specialize in. Of course, I feel incredibly sorry about the war, and of course, I don't want any war. However, right now we're simply talking about the market and looking at how the markets are behaving. And in my view, all of this is just manipulation again, because what you see in the background here is the oil price. Every time the oil price is dropping, news comes out like here on November 27, 2024, that Israel has attacked Lebanon. That really did happen. Oil prices surged again, and Lebanon launched 1 or 2 counterattacks. And then the matter was over. I don't want to downplay or sugarcoat this attack, but I just want to tell you, every time we see oil prices stagnate and above all fall, that's when news like this suddenly comes out. Just like here. I mean, we've been stagnating quite a bit over the past few weeks. Now the news came out, and bam, to oil prices shot right back up. And I'm telling you, there are players out there who want higher oil prices. Here in the background, I also showed you a graphic illustrating how, for over 30 years, it's been claimed Iran is on the verge of having the atomic bomb. Most of the time, the timeline was about 3 to 5 years, or 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes even just 6 months. Why do they do that? That's simply deliberate manipulation. For almost 30 years now, they've been claiming that Iran is on the verge of having the atomic bomb, that we need to be careful and so on. It's obviously a scam. It's clearly market manipulation, what's happening here. Right now, they are pushing oil prices up again because some players, like the USA, for example, benefit greatly from it. The USA benefits from this because the dollar is tied to the oil price and because the USA earns much, much more money when oil is more expensive. If the oil price rises by $5, that's billions more that the USA takes in. That's the point, and that's what I want to tell you here. To me, it just looks like this is market manipulation again, and that this wars, I hope, could already be over in a few days. Maybe now Iran will launch 1 or 2 counterattacks, and that will be it, just like with Lebanon at the end of last year. Lebanon fired back with 2 or 3 rocket strikes, and that was the end of it. It could be the same this time. At the very least, that would just be typical. As I said, every time oil drops, somehow a conflict in the Middle East suddenly appears. And I don't like to say it, but to me it looks manipulated. Of course, these higher oil prices now also mean that we could potentially see interest rate hikes sooner. More expensive oil can have a negative impact on US inflation because if we have more expensive oil, some products here will probably become more expensive. Delivery costs will of course rise, and as a result, products will become more expensive. This affects the entire US economy and inflation continues to rise. That means more expensive oil makes it more likely that we'll see further interest rate hikes rather than cuts. That wouldn't bring us any closer to our goal either. Let's just hope that the whole thing will be over again in the next few days. But what you have to say is that with these small flash crashes, we always get a bit of a reset. In the short term, we've seen that the funding rate has dropped sharply again, leverage in the market is being reduced, and that enables us to start the next bigger upward trend. That's why these kinds of market corrections are always quite good in the long run. We can also see here that there's hardly any liquidity left on the downside. Accordingly, the probability is now higher that we'll head towards a new all-time high, since there's more liquidity up there. Whenever Bitcoin is about to break out, there are always some new headlines. We can see that here as well. In this cycle, we've already been close to the overheated zone twice, but that was clearly held back because there are market makers, players in the market who don't want us to enter this euphoria phase yet. Why don't they want that? It's simple because there's so much leverage in the market these days. They're happy if the whole thing gets dragged out as long as possible. And that's just one of those things you simply have to understand it here. The really big, heavy hitters want to drag out the whole game here. And as I said, with Bitcoin, we have now, as it appears, formed a lower high, which is definitely positive. Take a look at the line. This is how I could imagine the next upward trend, that we might test this area again and then continue to rise. I'm optimistic. You can already see that. I'm not expecting any lows below $100,000 now, but we'll see. Of course, it's still possible, but there isn't much liquidity here, and I think we've already seen the worst of this market reaction so far. At least, I hope so. Otherwise, things will get really interesting if we now sustainably break through our all-time high here. If we manage to break through that, things will immediately get interesting for the altcoins. Because after that, we usually see this euphoria phase with the altcoins and of course, even stronger all-time highs. So let's first take a look at the altcoin sector and then I'll show you 4 altcoin charts, where and how we are accumulating for long-term goals. Because we are focused on the long term here and everything that's happening right now is only temporary. I'm sure that in a few weeks, all of this probably won't seem so bad anymore, and by then we'll likely be standing much higher. We are now here on the total 3 chart, and on the total 3 chart, we had a very sharp downward phase where we have now simply built up a support zone, and it looks like we are now finding support here again. Accordingly, we have drawn this green box here. That would be this accumulation phase, and that's exactly where we are slowly arriving now. That means this is usually the time when you accumulate altcoins, because from here we expect a turnaround and that the altcoins will start performing well again as billions will flow back into the altcoin sector. We can observe something similar with Bitcoin dominance. Here we are slowly forming a triangle, and then it will be interesting to see in which direction it will break out. But since we had a vector candle here, I would tend to think that because we are already standing so high at the moment, we will slowly see a reversal and then first see a corrective move in Bitcoin dominance, which of course is potentially very, very good for the altcoins. That's why I am definitely optimistic for the altcoins in the coming weeks. At least the charts support this. And then let's talk about a few altcoins. For one, I currently have my eye on AAVE, which is looking good in terms of TVL. And from a chart perspective, it looks like we have an upward structure here, which we have always recognized as a support zone so far. And right now, it looks the same again. Accordingly, we are buying in this red area. This is our accumulation phase. We are buying in this area because we are, of course, thinking long term and still see this as a support zone. So we naturally expect a breakout. That's what we're seeing with AAV. It will get especially interesting here when we reach our local top of $400. If we break through that, things will get really euphoric with this altcoin, and that will quickly and rapidly send us toward major new all-time highs. Next, we have Uniswap here. In the DeFi sector, it's an absolute powerhouse. Everyone knows Uniswap. Everyone uses it, especially in combination with Ethereum. Uniswap becomes really interesting. That's why we're holding on to it, because we're also starting to see that Ethereum is really picking up nicely. Ethereum is still interesting after all. This benefits Uniswap. Here, it looks like we've already experienced another breakout. We expect it now in this red zone where we currently are. We see another turnaround and then rising prices here as well. Accordingly, we're currently buying Uniswap here as well because the charts simply show us that these are good buying opportunities. And I've also added the SIR project to the portfolio. It's in the top 200, ranked 107 with a market cap of 540 million, and it's a top project in the RWA sector. In the RWA sector, they've really delivered well so far, and that makes me optimistic because I think the RWA narrative is one of the most interesting for this cycle. From a technical chart perspective, it looks like we have the next resistance here, and it would be here. And from here, we would then see the next upswing. Otherwise, we could continue to rise from here. From a chart perspective, we're buying exactly in this zone here. In the long term, we are very optimistic about this project, especially, as I said, because it's in the DeFi sector. And then we also have the project Comp, which is also a DeFi project with a market cap of 470 million. So compared to the other projects, it's a bit smaller, but in my opinion, these are good gems for this cycle because they have a solid structure. Here, from a DeFi perspective, we have a good TVL, and from a chart perspective, we've simply seen a bottom forming here. We've seen this bottom formation here, we've seen the breakout here, and we're buying in this red zone. That means we're still waiting for price targets below $50, and then we'll accumulate more heavily here because we believe the next upswing, the next upward trend is coming here as well. You can find more insights on trading, how we create our setups, and when and where we enter trades, all in our trading community. So definitely join us there. It's completely free. All the details are in the description.